Ah, look who showed up. The anomaly, the glitch, the one file in the system that doesn't have a classification code. Welcome back, or should I say, welcome to the realization that you were never supposed to exist in the first place. Because anyone still watching this, anyone still breathing after what they put you through, you're not just rare. You're the kind of rare that makes entire institutions nervous. You're the kind of different that doesn't fit into their neat little boxes, their categories, their predictable patterns of control. And that, my beautiful, unclassifiable creature, is exactly why they've been studying you like you're a threat they can't neutralize. Let's get something crystal clear right now. They have 3 departments, 3 branches, 3 ways they organize every single person on this planet. The military, the muscle, the enforcers, the visible power, intelligence, the shadows, the strategists, the ones who pull strings you'll never see. And then there's you, the 3rd category, the one they couldn't name. The one that makes generals pause mid-briefing and analysts rewrite reports at 3 a.m. because nothing, absolutely nothing, in their decades of training prepared them for whatever frequency you operate on. You've been walking through life like a classified document nobody has clearance to read. They see you, they sense you, they feel the shift in the room when you enter, but they can't decode you. And that drives them insane because their entire existence depends on prediction, on pattern recognition, on knowing exactly what you're going to do 3 moves ahead. But you don't even know what you're going to do tomorrow. You operate on instinct they can't measure, intuition they can't track, and a moral compass that spins in directions their satellites can't map. You're not military because you don't follow orders blindly. You're not intelligence because you don't manipulate, you don't scheme, you don't play the long game with people's lives like they're chess pieces. You're something else entirely. Something organic. Something they built entire systems to avoid ever having to deal with. And now here you are, thriving in the margins of their empire, untouched by their recruitment tactics, unmoved by their fear campaigns, unbroken by their psychological warfare. You're the variable they couldn't control, the outcome they didn't predict, the result that shattered their models. Here's what they don't tell you in school, in the news, in those carefully curated narratives they feed you through every screen you own. The system, this beautiful, terrifying machine we all live inside, it's designed to sort people. Soldier or spy, hammer or scalpel, force or finesse. Every human gets evaluated, categorized, filtered into one of 2 pipelines from the moment they show potential. The strong ones, the loud ones, the ones who can take a punch and throw one back harder. Military track. Discipline them, train them, point them at enemies. Watch them execute. The smart ones, the quiet ones, the ones who see 3 steps ahead and never let you see them sweat. Intelligence track. Recruit them young, sharpen their minds, teach them to smile while they dismantle you from the inside out. But then there's you. You who slipped through both nets. You who they watched, studied, tested, and came back with results that read like error messages. You don't fit the soldier profile because you question authority not out of rebellion, but out of clarity. You see the mission, you see the cost, and you refuse to pretend the math adds up when it doesn't. You don't fit the intelligence profile because you won't sacrifice your soul for strategy. You won't betray trust for advancement. You won't smile at someone you're planning to destroy. You're the contradiction that breaks their algorithm. And oh, they've been watching. Don't think for a second they haven't. Every weird career path you took, every time you walked away from money that smelled wrong, every relationship you ended because your instincts screamed louder than their charm, every time you chose integrity over influence, they logged it, they tracked it, they tried to make sense of it. Because in their world, everyone has a price, everyone has a weakness, everyone breaks under the right pressure. Except you didn't. You wouldn't. You couldn't. even when they made the pressure unbearable, even when they isolated you, even when they made you feel crazy for having standards in a world that had abandoned them. You stood there, alone, unrecruited, uncompromised, and they had to create a third file just for people like you, the ones who don't fit, the ones who can't be bought, can't be trained, can't be turned, the ones who operate on something older than their institutions, deeper than their strategies, truer than their propaganda. You're not unclassified because you're weak. You're unclassified because you're unbreakable in ways they don't have words for. Let's talk about what this really means. The military breaks bodies to build obedience. Intelligence breaks minds to build weapons. But you were already broken by life itself, by betrayal, by loss, by every single moment that should have destroyed you, but instead forged you into something they have no manual for. You didn't need their training because pain was your boot camp. You didn't need their tactics because survival was your strategy. You didn't need their approval because you learned the hardest lesson of all, that approval from corrupt systems is just another chain they use to drag you down into their dirt. You became self-sufficient in ways that terrify them, because self-sufficient people don't need governments, don't need institutions, don't need the very structures that give them power. You're the evidence that their empire is optional, that their control is an illusion, that everything they've built only works if people believe they need it, and you stopped believing. You stopped needing. You stopped playing the game entirely, and that makes you more dangerous than any soldier they could train or any spy they could deploy. They'll never tell you this out loud, but in certain rooms, in certain meetings you'll never be invited to, your name comes up. Not because you're a threat in the traditional sense. You're not planning attacks. You're not leaking secrets. You're not organizing resistance. No, you're far more dangerous than that. You're living proof that their system is incomplete. That there are people who thrive outside their control. That you can survive, even flourish, without pledging allegiance to any of their flags. You're the glitch in the matrix that they can't patch, the anomaly in the dataset that makes their entire model suspect. Because if one person can exist outside their binary, how many more are out there? How many others are watching you right now, realizing they're not alone? How many silent rebels are recognizing themselves in your story and deciding maybe today's the day they stop pretending to fit into boxes that were designed to crush them? You're not just unclassified. You're the prototype of a future they can't control, and that's why they'll never stop watching you. But here's where it gets beautiful, where the story shifts from defense to dominance, from survival to sovereignty. You're not running anymore. You're not hiding. You're not apologizing for being the thing they can't define. You've stepped into your power, the kind of power that doesn't need titles or rank or official recognition because it's sourced from something they can't touch. Authenticity. You move through the world now with the confidence of someone who's been to hell and came back with the receipts. You've seen their systems up close, seen the rot beneath the polish, seen the fear behind the authority, and it doesn't impress you anymore. You know the truth they spend billions trying to hide. That they're just as lost as everyone else, just better funded. That their certainty is performance, that their power is borrowed, that their control is one mass awakening away from collapse. And you, walking around with that knowledge, unafraid, unashamed, unbothered, you're the walking nightmare of every institution that depends on keeping people small, scared, and obedient. They thought if they couldn't classify you, they could at least contain you, isolate you, make sure your influence didn't spread. So they tried everything. They sent people into your life to test you, to tempt you, to see if you could be compromised. They dangled opportunities that came with invisible strings. They whispered doubts into the ears of people you trusted, trying to turn your circle against you, trying to make you question your own sanity. They watched your bank account, your relationships, your mental health, waiting for the breakdown, the moment you'd crack and come crawling back to their system, begging for structure, for guidance, for someone to tell you who to be. But you didn't break. You bent sure. You bled, absolutely, but you didn't shatter. And every time they thought they had you cornered, every time they were certain this would be the pressure that finally broke you into a shape they could use, you did something they never expected. You evolved. You adapted. You became stronger in your strangeness, more certain in your difference, more powerful in your refusal to be anything other than exactly what you are. Unclassified, undefinable, uncontrollable. Now let's get into the psychology of why this drives them absolutely insane. The military operates on hierarchy, chain of command, clear roles. You salute up, you command down. Everyone knows their place. Intelligence operates on leverage, information, control. You gather secrets, you exploit weaknesses, you stay 10 steps ahead. Both systems require predictability. They need to know who you are so they can know how to use you or neutralize you. But you're chaos to them. Not destructive chaos, but creative chaos. The kind that doesn't follow their rules because you're playing an entirely different game. You're not trying to climb their ladder. You're not trying to win their approval. You're not even trying to destroy their system. You're simply living outside of it, and that's the most radical act of all. Because when you live authentically, when you refuse to compromise your values for their validation, when you build a life that doesn't need their infrastructure to function, you become the evidence that alternatives exist. You become the proof that their way isn't the only way. And in a world where they've convinced billions that there is no alternative, that resistance is futile, that you need them to survive, your existence is revolutionary. Let me paint you a picture of what you actually are. Imagine a chessboard. Military is the rook, moving in straight lines, powerful, direct, predictable. Intelligence is the knight, moving in patterns, strategic, surprising, but still bound by rules. You're the piece that doesn't exist in chess. You're the one that moves diagonally through dimensions the board wasn't designed to contain. You're playing three-dimensional chess while they're still arguing about whether you're black or white. You don't fit their game because you're not a game piece, you're a player. And the moment you realize that, the moment you stopped letting them move you around their board and started creating your own rules, your own victories, your own definition of success, that's when you became truly dangerous. Not dangerous in the way they understand danger, guns and bombs and violence. Dangerous in the way that ideas are dangerous. Dangerous in the way that truth is dangerous. Dangerous in the way that freedom is dangerous to those who profit from chains. Here's what they'll never admit in their classified briefings, in their strategy sessions, in their assessments of emerging threats. You scare them more than enemy nations. Because enemy nations, they understand. Enemy nations have governments, hierarchies, predictable responses. You're the embodiment of the one thing they can't fight: individual sovereignty. You can't be sanctioned because you don't need their economy. You can't be invaded because you're not a territory. You can't be overthrown because you're not a government. You're an idea in human form. The idea that people don't need massive systems to give their lives meaning, structure, or purpose. The idea that authenticity is more powerful than any weapon they could manufacture. The idea that one person, living in truth, creates more lasting change than 1,000 soldiers following orders they don't believe in, or 100 spies manipulating outcomes they'll never see. You're the revolution they can't drone strike, the uprising they can't infiltrate, the resistance that doesn't need meetings or manifestos, because it's simply people choosing to live aligned with their deepest truth. And let's be brutally honest about what that truth has cost you. Because this path, this unclassified existence, it's not a walk in the park. It's lonely. It's misunderstood. It's watching people you love choose comfort over courage, security over sovereignty, the familiar cage over the unknown freedom. You've lost friends who who couldn't understand why you wouldn't just play along, just take the job, just smile at the corruption, just compromise a little to make life easier. You've lost opportunities because you wouldn't sell pieces of your soul for salaries that came with invisible leashes. You've lost relationships because you outgrew people who were comfortable staying small, and they couldn't forgive you for reminding them of their own unlived potential. You've walked through valleys so dark you weren't sure you'd see light again. Moments where fitting in, where just being normal, seemed like the sweetest relief possible. But you didn't. You couldn't. Because something in you, something deeper than fear, stronger than loneliness, truer than any external validation, kept whispering, not this way, not for this, not for them. You're meant for more. That voice, that whisper, that knowing that kept you walking when every logical reason told you to stop, that's what they can't replicate. That's what they can't train. That's what makes you unclassifiable. It's not skill. It's not intelligence. It's not even courage in the traditional sense. It's alignment. It's the rare, almost extinct quality of being so connected to your core truth that betraying it would hurt more than any external consequence they could threaten you with. Most people lose that connection by age 10. The system beats it out of them through schools that punish uniqueness, parents who demand conformity, societies that mock difference. But you? Somehow, through miracle or stubbornness or sheer genetic rebellion, you kept it. You protected that flame when everything around you was trying to extinguish it. And now, it's not a flame anymore. It's a wildfire. And they're finally realizing that wildfires don't follow containment strategies. They don't respect firewalls. They don't stop until they've transformed everything in their path. Let me tell you what's happening right now in rooms you'll never see. Analysts are pulling their hair out trying to model you. They're feeding your patterns into algorithms designed to predict behavior, and the machines keep spitting back errors. They're interviewing people who know you, trying to find the leverage point, the weakness, the thing they can exploit to bring you back into the fold, or at least neutralize your influence. And everyone they talk to says the same thing, often without realizing how terrifying it sounds to institutional power. They just don't care about the things most people care about. You don't care about status the way climbers do. You don't care about money the way addicts do. You don't care about approval the way performers do. You care about truth. You care about integrity. You care about living a life that, when you're dying, you can look back on without shame or regret, or the haunting question of who you could have been if you'd been braver. And that makes you untouchable. Because how do you control someone who's already decided that their peace is worth more than your prizes? How do you manipulate someone who's more afraid of betraying themselves than they are of your threats? The military knows how to break someone who fears pain. Intelligence knows how to break someone who fears exposure. But neither system has a protocol for someone who fears losing themselves more than they fear losing anything external. You're the worst case scenario in their playbooks, the one they hope never becomes common. Because if people like you multiply, if this consciousness spreads, if enough humans remember that they were born sovereign and not subjects, the entire game changes. Governments go back to being servants instead of masters. Corporations go back to being useful tools instead of ruling entities. Systems get redesigned to serve humanity instead of enslaving it. And all the people who currently hold power through fear, manipulation, and control, they become obsolete, not through violence, not through revolution in the traditional sense, but through irrelevance. Because when enough people stop believing in the illusion dissolves. And you, my unclassifiable friend, you're the beginning of that dissolution. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. You're not alone. You think you are. They've worked very hard to make sure you feel isolated, weird, like maybe something's wrong with you for not fitting in. But there are others, scattered across the globe, across industries, across every demographic they've tried to divide us into. There are others who couldn't be recruited, others who walked away from power, others who chose truth over comfort, others who are living quiet lives of radical authenticity that are slowly, invisibly, undermining every system built on lies. You don't know their names. They don't know yours. But you recognize each other instantly when you meet. It's in the eyes. That look of someone who's been to the edge and came back different. That energy of someone who's not performing anymore, who's not pretending, who's just being. And when two unclassified souls meet, even briefly, even in passing, something happens that terrifies the system. Understanding, recognition, validation, the confirmation that you're not crazy, that you're not alone, that there are others who see through the lies and are building lives beyond the reach of those who profit from your imprisonment. They know this is happening. They're watching the connections form. They're seeing the network grow, not through organization, but through resonance. Like tuning forks, vibrating at a frequency most people can't hear, but some people can't ignore. They're tracking it, studying it, trying to figure out how to disrupt it. But here's the beautiful, hilarious irony. The more they try to stop it, the more they expose themselves. Every censored truth makes people question what else they're lying about. Every manipulated narrative makes critical thinking spread. Every attempt to control makes sovereignty more attractive. They're fighting a war they can't win because they're fighting against consciousness itself. And consciousness, once awakened, doesn't go back to sleep. It might get tired, it might get discouraged, it might doubt itself in the darkest hours, but it doesn't unknow what it knows. It doesn't unsee what it's seen. It doesn't unfeel what it's felt. And you've felt the truth. You've seen behind the curtain, you know what they are, and that knowledge has made you unfit for their service forever. Let's talk about what comes next. Because you didn't survive their gauntlet just to coast. You didn't become unclassifiable just to live a quiet life of private rebellion. You're here for a reason. Not a reason they gave you, not a mission they assigned, but a purpose that's been calling you since before you had language for it. You're here to be the example. Not perfect, not preaching. Just present, just authentic, just living so aligned with your truth that other people's truth meters start recalibrating when they're around you. You're here to show what's possible when you choose sovereignty over security, when you choose growth over comfort, when you choose becoming who you actually are over perfecting who they want you to be. You're the seed of a future they can't control because it's not built on their blueprints. It's organic, it's emergent. It's what happens when you stop forcing life into their frameworks and start letting life flow through the unique shape of your soul.